Paris Saint-Germain, a club that didn't exist until 1970, and yet today, they're one of the biggest names in football. It didn't happen overnight. It took ambition, reinvention, and a lot of setbacks. And this is how it all came together. This is the story of Paris Saint-Germain. Welcome to Football Clubs of the World, where football's greatest stories come alive. Paris, one of the most iconic cities in the world, didn't even have a proper football club for most of the 20th century. While cities like Marseille and Saint-Étienne built football legacies, Paris watched from the sidelines. By the late 1960s, the French capital had 0 clubs in the top division. So in 1970, 2 local sides, Paris FC and Stade Saint-Germain, merged to form Paris Saint-Germain. PSG started in Division 2 and earned promotion to the top flight in their very first season. But political pressure from the city forced a split. Paris FC stayed up, while PSG were pushed down to the 3rd tier. Undeterred, PSG climbed quickly. Back-to-back promotions took them to Division 1 by 1974. That same year, they moved into the Parc des Princes. Ironically, PSG got the stadium because Paris FC was relegated in the same year, leaving the stadium vacant for PSG. In just 4 years, they'd gone from an idea to a first division club in a world-class stadium. The early years in the top flight were tough. PSG hovered around mid-table, occasionally flirting with relegation. But in 1977, new president Francis Borrelli brought ambition and emotion, the kind of guy who would kiss the turf after a big win. Under his leadership, the club started pulling in real talent, including winger Dominique Rocheteau, the winger they called the Green Angel from his Saint-Étienne days. Their first major success came in the Coupe de France, which they won in 1982 and 1983. Then, in the 1985 to 1986 season, PSG went 26 games unbeaten to win their first league title. They weren't a super team, but they had a balanced squad with players like Rocheteau, Sušić, and Fernandez. The title changed everything. PSG was in the conversation. But by the late 80s, the momentum stalled. The club was stagnant until 1991 when TV giant Canal+ took over. Their vision was clear: turn PSG into a national football powerhouse. They brought in stars like David Ginola and George Weah. Over his time at PSG, Weah scored 55 goals across all competitions. A few years later, in 1995, he became the first, and to this day only, African player to win the Ballon d'Or. Domestically, they lifted multiple cups and won the league again in 1994. But their most impressive feats came in Europe. From 1993 to 1997, PSG reached 5 straight European semifinals. In 1996, they won the UEFA Cup Winners' Cup, beating Rapid Wien in the final. Players like Rai, Weah, Ginola, and Lama became club legends. Paris Saint-Germain were no longer just a French club. They had real European stature. However, the late 90s and early 2000s brought inconsistency. Key players left, managers rotated constantly, and despite flashes of brilliance, PSG lacked structure. They finished as low as 16th in 2008, narrowly avoiding relegation. By 2010, the club had just 2 league titles and 1 major European trophy in 40 years. The infrastructure and fan base were there, but the results weren't. Then came the turning point, the 2011 takeover by Qatar Sports Investments. QSI brought ambition and, more importantly, funding. They signed players like Pastore, then Zlatan Ibrahimovic and Thiago Silva in 2012. Zlatan scored 156 goals in 180 games and brought global attention. From 2013 to 2016, PSG won 4 straight league titles, dominated domestic cups, and consistently reached the Champions League quarterfinals. They were France's super club, but still hadn't cracked Europe's elite. For all the domestic dominance, the Champions League kept slipping through their fingers. The Qatari ownership had built a machine that ruled the French league, but it wasn't built to conquer Europe. So in 2017, they snapped. That summer, they triggered Neymar's €222 million release clause, the biggest transfer fee in football history. And just weeks later, they secured Kylian Mbappe, in that time the most electric teenage talent in world football. PSG's star power skyrocketed. They won multiple league titles and domestic trophies, but Champions League disappointment lingered. Most notably a round of 16 collapse against Manchester United in 2019. Then came the pandemic-shortened 2020 Champions League campaign. Paris Saint-Germain reached their first Champions League final but lost 1-0 to Bayern Munich. Still, it marked a shift. PSG could finally compete with Europe's best. In 2021, they signed Lionel Messi, joining Neymar and Mbappe in a historic front three. But chemistry issues, defensive weaknesses, and Champions League failures continued. By 2023, Messi and Neymar had left. Mbappe followed in 2024, leaving the club at a crossroads. Rather than collapse, PSG rebuilt. Under sporting advisor Luis Campos and coach Luis Enrique, the club shifted its focus from star power to structure. And bringing in Campos wasn't just smart, it was symbolic. PSG had only lost the league title twice during the entire Qatar era, once to Monaco in 2017 and once to Lille in 2021. Campos had played a central role in both. He was sporting director at Monaco when they built a young and fearless side featuring Mbappe, Fabinho, and Bernardo Silva. Then at Lille, although he left just before the 2020-21 title-winning season, it was his recruitment and long-term planning that laid the foundation. So instead of chasing another superstar, PSG brought in the man who had already cracked the French league code. Twice. The result? A team with real identity. In this time, they built a balanced squad around Donnarumma in goal, with Marquinhos and Pacho anchoring the defense. Out wide, Nuno Mendes and Achraf Hakimi offered constant threat and stability. The midfield trio, Vitinha, João Neves, and Fabian Ruiz, played in perfect sync, controlling tempo and transitions. Up front, Ousmane Dembele finally found consistency. Kvaratskhelia slotted in like he'd been there for years, and the next generation with Désiré Doué, Bradley Barcola, and Seny Mayulu didn't just fill gaps, they made an impact. It wasn't just a new PSG, it was the most complete version the club had ever seen. The 2024-25 Champions League brought a new format, the Swiss model. PSG struggled in the league phase, finishing 15th. After that, they swept aside Brest with a 10-0 aggregate in the playoffs, and then edged past Liverpool on penalties after a tense two-legged draw. Aston Villa were outscored over 2 open matches, and in the semis, PSG proved too strong for Arsenal, winning both legs to reach the final. Waiting for them in the final was Inter Milan, fresh off one of the most insane semifinals in the history of the Champions League against Barcelona, that ended in a 7-6 aggregate win for Inter. This time, PSG were ready. They delivered a historic 5-0 win, the largest margin in Champions League final history. Goals from Hakimi, Doué twice, Kvaratskhelia, and Mayulu. Donnarumma kept a clean sheet. Vitinha and Neves dominated midfield, and Marquinhos lifted the trophy. After years of near misses, PSG had done it. Not with a super team, but with a super squad. The 2025 Champions League wasn't just a trophy, it was a new beginning. Now, PSG stand as true European champions. And the question isn't whether they belong, it's whether they can stay there. Because once you've climbed the mountain, the real challenge is staying there. Thanks for watching this episode of Football Clubs of the World. Which club should we explore next? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. Until then, stay safe.